Let me tell you something about the Vorrkai Collective. We were, by every measurable standard in the known galaxy, the most sophisticated civilization to ever grace the stars. We had 17 colonies. We had faster-than-light relay networks. We had cuisine that could make a Delveri warlord weep like a hatchling. We had everything. What we did not have was good judgment. Because on the 14th rotation of the Vorrkai Grand Cycle, our High Council looked at their long-range scanners, spotted a small, wet, unremarkable planet in the outer rim, and said, "Let us make contact." That planet was called Earth, and that decision, my friends, was the beginning of a very, very long nightmare. My name is Advisor Thurak. I was, at the time, the senior diplomatic officer aboard the first contact vessel Sovereign Whisper. I was chosen because I was calm, rational, experienced. I had negotiated trade agreements with the Farathi Dominion. I had sat across tables from species with 4 mouths and 12 opinions. I was not afraid of anything. I repeat, I was not afraid of anything. I would like to formally update that statement. The first signal we received from Earth was not a greeting. It was not a declaration of peace. It was not even a question about who we were or where we came from. It was music. Specifically, it was a transmission of something the humans called rock and roll. Loud, chaotic, rhythmically inconsistent in a way that somehow felt intentional. Our acoustic analyst, a brilliant young officer named Prex, spent 40 minutes trying to decode it as a military frequency. "It is not a code," Prex finally said, pulling off his headset with the expression of a being whose entire education had just been insulted. "It is entertainment." "They sent us entertainment," said Captain Vossel, leaning back in his command chair. "They sent us noise," Prex corrected. "Structured noise that they appear to enjoy." We sat in silence for a moment. "Fascinating," said Vossel. "Terrifying," I said. We were both right. We entered Earth's orbit on a Tuesday. We later learned that Tuesday is named after a human war deity, which in hindsight should have told us everything we needed to know. The planet was busy. That is the only word I have. Every single frequency was alive. The humans were talking, constantly, to each other, to their machines, to the open void apparently, with no concern about who might be listening. They were broadcasting cooking instructions, athletic competitions, arguments about politics, a program where humans watched other humans renovate living spaces and then cried about it. They have no concept of information discipline, our communications officer, Raleigh, said, staring at her console with wide eyes. They have no concept of quiet, I replied. They are loud, said Captain Vossel, and then the humans noticed us. Not through their military tracking systems, not through their deep space observatories, through a 17-year-old named Orion Vesh, who pointed his amateur telescope at the sky from a rooftop in a city called Nairobi and uploaded a photograph of our vessel to something called the Internet. Within 6 minutes, 3 billion humans knew we existed. Within 12 minutes, their governments were arguing about it. Within 20 minutes, one human had already created merchandise. The official first contact delegation arrived in a vessel that frankly looked like it had been assembled over a long weekend by beings who disagreed about the blueprints. It was held together by engineering that was at best adventurous, and yet it flew. It flew well. And it docked with our ship without a single incident, which impressed our engineers far more than they wanted to admit. The delegation consisted of 4 humans. Ambassador Lyra Moss, who had the calm expression of someone who had survived worse things than alien contact and intended to survive this too. Dr. Fen Adu, a scientist whose smile suggested he had been waiting for this moment his entire life and was absolutely not going to waste it. A security officer named Kade, who said nothing, stood in the corner and made 3 of my colleagues deeply uncomfortable just by existing. And a translator, a young woman named Solavrix, who spoke 17 Earth languages and had apparently learned basic Vorrkai from intercepted broadcasts in approximately 9 days. 9 days. Our language academy takes 4 years. Sola greeted our captain in accented but perfectly grammatical Vorrkai. And the look on Captain Vossel's face was the look of a being who has just realized the game is different from the one he came to play. "You are smaller than we expected," Captain Vossel said, diplomatically. Ambassador Moss tilted her head slightly. "You are taller than we expected," she replied. "But we have dealt with tall before." The room felt different after that sentence. Not threatening, just informative. Like a fact about the weather, delivered with total certainty. A fact that suggested there were other things they had dealt with before, things larger and more dangerous than us, and they were still standing here in our ship entirely relaxed. Dr. Fenn, meanwhile, was staring at everything. The walls, the ceiling panels, the atmospheric regulators. He had produced a small recording device and was narrating quietly to himself, rapid and delighted, like a hatchling seeing the sky for the first time. "Incredible hull composition," he whispered. "Looks like a bonded alloy weave. They solved resonance fracturing with micro-layered plating. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous." Kade was still in the corner. Kade had not blinked. I had been counting. The formal negotiations were scheduled for the following morning. We retired to our quarters to prepare. I did not sleep. I lay in the dark, replaying every interaction, every expression, every word. The humans had walked onto our vessel, the most advanced craft in the Vorrkai fleet, and they had not been afraid. They had not been nervous. They had been curious, excited, professionally polite in that particular way, that suggested they had dealt with far stranger, and had documentation to prove it. I reached for my datapad, and pulled up our original survey of Earth. Category 4 civilization, pre-interstellar, moderate military capability, likely, non-threatening. I deleted the last 3 words. And I wrote, in their place, reassess everything. I want to be clear about something. The Vorrkai Collective did not come to Earth with bad intentions. We came with curiosity. We came with the quiet, comfortable arrogance of a civilization that had done this 17 times before, and always walked away with a favorable trade agreement, a new satellite relay contract, and a species that was grateful, cooperative, and appropriately impressed by our superior technology. We had a system. The system worked. Earth broke the system on day 2. The negotiation chamber, aboard the Sovereign Whisper, was designed to be psychologically optimal. The lighting was calibrated to induce calm. The seating arrangement placed our delegation slightly elevated, a subtle but effective technique we had used for decades to establish authority without aggression. The temperature was set to Vorrkai comfort standard. The air carried a mild compound our behavioral scientists called accord mist, a harmless atmospheric addition that historically made other species more agreeable. Ambassador Moss walked in, sat down, looked at the ceiling lights, looked at the elevated seating platform, and then looked directly at me. "You adjusted the room," she said. It was not a question. I said nothing. She smiled. Not a warm smile. The kind of smile that is used when someone already knows the answer and is being polite enough not to say it out loud. "We would prefer neutral lighting," she said, "and level seating, and whatever is in the air, please turn it off." I stared at her. "We have sensitive respiratory systems," Dr. Fenn added cheerfully, not looking up from the notes he was still writing at a pace that seemed physically unreasonable. "Also, accord compounds have a slightly sweet aftertaste, and Kade has allergies." Kade, from the corner, nodded once. I turned off the accord mist. I also quietly had the seating leveled. Captain Vossel shot me a look. I shot him one back. The look said, "Do not argue with these people about the furniture." The first agenda item was a standard resource survey proposal. We would conduct a modest geological assessment of 3 uninhabited Earth continents. In exchange, we would offer communications technology, a standard package, nothing extraordinary. The kind of thing that had dazzled 17 other species into long-term cooperative agreements. I presented the proposal. Ambassador Moss read through it. Then she slid it back across the table. "No," she said. "Just that. No elaboration. No counter-offer. No diplomatic softening. Just a single, clean, quiet word that landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. No?" Captain Vossel repeated. "No," she said again, apparently unbothered by the need to repeat herself. "We are offering you communications technology that would advance your civilization by approximately 300 years, Vossel said. "We know," said Moss. "We are declining. You are declining 300 years of advancement. We are declining 300 years of your advancement," she said, and there was a very specific weight on that word, your, that made our entire delegation go very still. "We prefer to get there ourselves. On our own timeline, with our own understanding of what we built and why." Dr. Fenn finally looked up. "No offense, the technology looks excellent. We just have a thing about accepting gifts we do not fully understand from people we just met. Past experience." "What past experience?" Prex asked from behind me. "You have never made contact with another civilization." "Not from space," Moss said, and she and Fenn exchanged a glance that contained an entire history we were not part of. We recessed for 2 hours. In the Vorrkai conference room, behind closed doors, the mood was somewhere between confused and genuinely unsettled. "They refused the technology package," Vossel said, as if saying it again would make it make more sense. "Every species accepts the technology package," said Raleigh. "Every species is impressed by the technology package," said Prex. "They were not impressed," I said. I had been sitting quietly, turning the interaction over in my mind like a stone with something interesting on the other side. "They were polite. There is a difference." Vossel folded his hands. "What do they want?" "That," I said, "is the right question." We returned to the table and asked it directly. A bold move. We did not usually ask. We usually offered, and the other species reacted, and we negotiated from there. Asking what they wanted felt uncomfortably like admitting we did not already know. Moss appreciated the directness. I could see it in the way her posture changed slightly, a small but readable signal of approval. "We want 3 things," she said. "First, full disclosure of every other species you have made contact with, their locations, their agreements with you, and their current status." Vossel blinked. "That is a significant amount of sensitive information." "Yes," she agreed. "Second," I asked. "Joint research access. Not your technology handed to us. Shared laboratories. Shared work. Equal credit. Equal understanding." "And third," said Vossel. Moss looked at him with those calm, unreadable eyes. "A guarantee," she said. "Formal, binding, witnessed by every species in your collective, that if any signatory of any agreement with the Vorrkai is ever threatened, exploited, or coerced by anyone including you, Earth will be notified." The room went very quiet. "You want to be?" Vossel said slowly, "a galactic watchdog." "We want to be informed," Moss said simply. "What you do with that information is your concern. What we do with it is ours." I will tell you what happened in the 2 seconds after that sentence. I looked at Kade. Kade was looking at Vossel, and for the first time since the humans had boarded our ship, Kade spoke. "We have been watching your broadcasts for 60 years, Kade said, in perfect Vorrkai, with no accent at all. "We know what happened to the Farathi Dominion. We know about the Solvari Compact. We know about the mining agreements on the outer rim colonies that the other species never read carefully enough. Nobody in our delegation moved. We read carefully," Kade said. "We signed their agreement. All 3 terms. Every clause. Witnessed and transmitted to every Vorrkai colony within the hour. I will not pretend it felt like a victory. It did not. It felt like something else, something I had not experienced in a long career of interstellar diplomacy. It felt like being measured, very precisely, by someone who already knew what the measurement was going to say, and was simply waiting for you to catch up." As the humans prepared to depart, Dr. Fenn stopped beside me in the corridor. He was still smiling that relentless, genuine, curious smile. "Good first meeting," he said. "You think so?" I asked. "Nobody got hurt," he said. As if this were the bar. As if this were the minimum threshold. As if the possibility of someone getting hurt had been, at some point, a real and considered alternative. I watched their vessel undock and drop away from us, small and patched and flying perfectly. I filed my report to the High Council that evening. The subject line read, Reassessment of Earth. Priority. Urgent. The first line read, "Do not send another fleet. Do not alter any agreements. Do not under any circumstances mistake their patience for weakness." The last line read, "They have been watching us for 60 years. They were ready before we arrived." I sent it, closed my datapad, and sat in the dark for a very long time. Because the Vorrkai Collective had made first contact with 17 species, and for the first time in our history, we were the ones who left feeling like we had been assessed,